Welcome to IT Origins, where each time we meet, we talk to engineers, entrepreneurs, and executives working in the field of IT and ask them how they got started. Today, we're going to be talking to Packet CEO Zachary Smith. It was a great conversation, and I think you'll enjoy. So, Zach, can you give me a sense of what your IT origin story is? How long have you been in the field, and what kind of drew you there?
My IT origin story, huh? Well,
does it involve a radioactive spider, first of all?
No,
standard question.
It does not involve a radioactive spider or my genes mutating in space.
I'm already disappointed, but please continue.
But it did start at Radio Shack. So when I was a kid, I was into PCs mainly because my aunt worked for IBM, and she got us a PC Junior, which I remember very clearly. I was in about third grade. And you know, at the time, like, you got the computer, and then there was like the floppy disk drive, which booted everything, and then you had to have your smart uncle or somebody come by to actually get it going. And then I decided later, like a couple weeks in, after we got it, you know, I was playing like Carmen Sandiego or whatever we had on the thing, WordPerfect, and I was the smart kid who decided I was going to take it apart, just like the smart uncle. So I took it apart, and I couldn't put it back together. And this kind of started with, you know, really, really upset my sister, who I guess had written some book report on some floppy disk and really needed to print it with a dot matrix printer. So she forgave me, but eventually I did fix it and got it back together. And ever since then, I've been kind of tinkering with computers. Can't say I was ever very good at it, but I always liked it and was always somewhat curious about how they work and what you could do with them.
So how do you get from screwing with your sister's life and making her life difficult by messing with a computer to Packet?
Well, by way of Juilliard.
Okay, so the usual path.
Yes, the usual path. I decided that although tinkering with computers and screwing with my sister's life was a good hobby, I was actually really into music. I played classical double bass and ended up going to Juilliard when I was 17. Moved to New York City from Orange County, California. And while I was here, I was paying my way through college by fixing computers for nice old ladies, getting them on the internet, you know, getting AOL hooked up, you know, helping them send pictures of to their grandkids or whatever. And, you know, I spent more and more time going through Juilliard, hanging out in the computer lab, which, as you may imagine, at a, you know, classical music conservatory is not very grandiose.
But
we had some computers. The acoustics are good. Everybody's very respectful of the noise. No, but there was a colleague or a friend of mine who was also a bass player. His name's Miles Cowan, and he was booting this really, really weird operating system called Gen 2 Linux. And I was just hanging out, wondering what it was, thinking about, hey, what's that? And we got started talking about open source. This was the late 90s, and I became more interested. My last year in college, I effectively decided that I wanted to spend more time in IT. I ended up getting a short temp job at Credit Suisse First Boston, helping the bankers do PowerPoint slides and answer other kinds of questions on the computer. And then while I was there, I started a web hosting business, and the rest is kind of history. Went from there until we had thousands and thousands of servers and building the internet, and here we are today.
So with that context, what's kind of been the biggest change in IT since you started your career or essentially started your interest maybe in the late 90s?
Well, the one that I like to focus on, I mean, there's obviously been a lot, but the one I like to focus on is just the access to tinkering. So I mentioned earlier, you know, one of the first areas when I got into computers, you could take them apart. Right? You could open them. In fact, you had to, because you probably had to put it together. I spent a lot of time at Radio Shack, you know, with Tandies, asking some guy in the corner right next to the transistors, you know, which video card I should pop in my PC. And so, you know, it was a kind of a build culture around that. And I didn't grow up like maybe my dad's generation grew up working on their, you know, 67 Mustang or whatever. I grew up working on my Tandy PC. And I think that's been a big change, is that, you know, the people who we bring into our business today and customers, you know, they have a MacBook which has no screws on it, and they can't open it. and there's just not that same kind of personal tinkering side. I'm not sure that materially impacts. These things are highly complex, and I probably couldn't put them together right now. But it is, give you kind of a personal control and feeling about how these things work, the lower level system. So for me, that's been one of the biggest changes, that most of our customers and most of the people we work with have never opened a computer in their life.
As someone who kind of got into technology from building their own PCs, that makes me sad. But it also makes me wonder, maybe going to a little bit into, Packet's business model, is that maybe that tinkering has moved from a hardware to more into software. I mean, we're seeing, kids programming their own apps. We're seeing, a lot of weirdness with software. Do you think there's any credence to that it's just shifted focus?
Well, definitely. I mean, the innovation on software is just somewhat mind-blowing, right? I think I read some stat, which could be wrong, but that there was, 15 plus million people who self-identified their jobs or their main source of income as software development, right? In the world today, seems like a lot of people writing software, and you can tell that with just the huge pace, the GitHub generation, social coding, open source. I mean, lots of people touch code all the time, right? What actually found that it was a surprising thing that we did when we started Packet, which is really, it was only 3.5 years ago that we started the company. And our job, our goal, our mission was to provide hardware access without abstraction, without kind of like the fuzzy gitchy goomies of virtualization or other kinds of layers that just allow you to play in JavaScript or whatnot, to give actual hardware access to a new generation that was, kind of not interested in going and grabbing all the parts and putting it together and putting it in a rack and turning it on and finding a switch and getting an AS and doing all that. But they did want to tinker. They just wanted to tinker in a more rapid fashion. And so we had thousands of users sign up for our service pretty quickly to tinker with raw hardware over the internet. And so I did a little Google search, where you do the Google Trends, and I looked at, cloud computing, and it was, this nice little line at the bottom going up and to the right a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, it was down there at like a 1. And then, I saw like Docker, which is a software thing that's pretty, popular these days, and it was at like a 2. And then I searched for Raspberry Pi, and it was like an 8. And I think that there are tinkers in the world. There are people who are very interested in what they can build with both software and hardware. It's just that we need to, as an industry, there isn't the neighborhood computer shop or even the Radio Shack anymore. And people's, kind of petri dish maybe isn't their neighborhood or their local data center or ISP, but it's kind of more flattened. It's the whole world, and they want to write software that impacts that. So, I think our little part in that is to how can we provide access to a new generation for hardware that's relevant to them. So that's how I see it, and I do believe that there are more people interested in tinkering on hardware if we made it available to them.
So this kind of builds off of that. What would you say, if there's anything different, is the current worst trend in IT?
Yeah.
Without burning any bridges.
Okay, I'm not going to burn any bridges here. I would say that there are a few companies in the world who have made infrastructure and access to hardware and the internet so polished, so good, they're so amazing at it, that it's actually really, really difficult for people to imagine or to start innovating on parts of the stack today. And it's because like the competition or the expectation is so high, right? And I kind of put that in the realm of, it'd be pretty difficult to go in and compete in the mobile phone business with the, just this amazing hardware and software ecosystem and refresh cycle and all these other things that make it like the consumer expectation. And I kind of feel the same way in IT and cloud computing. The user expectations are so high, and the capabilities of a very few number of people are so good. And by that I mean the largest internet companies in the world, that it's really stifling some of the innovation capability, because it's really hard for 3 people in their bedroom or corner office to be in the infrastructure space or to innovate on that layer. And I'm a little bit worried about what that means 10 years out from now, because I do think, although we're going to be in a world that's dominated by software innovation, that all the biggest software innovation that we know will rely upon being tightly coupled to hardware. And that's when I think forward to, I have small kids, 6 and 8. I look forward to their future when they're 16 years old. Are they driving cars or the cars driving them? I just don't think that the technology that will empower that experience will be abstracted software with no relation to hardware. It will be software that's highly coupled with hardware. So that's what I'm worried about. And the trend that I am, most anxious about is lack of access and ability to innovate on kind of the global infrastructure layer.
Well, let's give our listeners some hope. Current best trend in IT.
Well, the best trend in IT is that the ability to use and innovate on the software layer is becoming so good. I'd like to give you an example, which is a few weeks ago we had a customer sign up, use our platform, do some things, and before I knew it, they had deployed in 18 locations using this distributed application they wrote. They're effectively being like a pretty particular CDN. Right. Mm-hmm. And, just 5 years ago, the ability to run a highly distributed application was the realm of a few. That was, the role of a few big CDNs, telecoms, and internet companies who could run highly distributed infrastructure and write software that could take advantage of that. And now here's, basically two kids, right, who read up on the internet around how to use Kubernetes and deployed an 18 location CDN for their gaming platform. Way to go, right?
Yeah,
so
awesome.
I think, and it wasn't even costing them that much, and I thought that, wow, that's really amazing what they could do so quickly, and using their own opinion. They effectively use almost exclusively open source technologies. They were I'm not going to say competing, but they were offering a compelling product that would have been totally impossible 5 years ago. So I'm pretty excited about that and what people will create.
All right, so shifting gears a little bit, I'm always interested in process, and as a CEO, I would imagine you have and given your background, perhaps some unique thoughts on this. But what are kind of some of your approaches to organization at work? Do you have any must-use apps that you can't live without? Just kind of curious to dig into that.
Yeah, well, I've been an IRC user for way too long. Because of that, it's pretty natural for me to use kind of real-time communication tools. We're a big user of Slack internally. It's like my most hated and most loved app at the same time. Communication is great, but it's, you can waste a lot of time on IRC, and you can also waste a ton of time on Slack. So, that's an area where we struggle. We try and really embrace transparency. We're not a huge company. We're about 50 people. We're pretty distributed. My kind of viewpoint is as soon as you have one remote worker, you're a remote company. And so we work really hard to be inclusive and, kind of be very open about our decision-making processes, what's happening within the company, the numbers. So, even though we send I send out my complete financial statements and all of our key numbers to all of our employees every month. So we're that transparent throughout our business, and that really helps. But sometimes the communication, the transparency and communication through these types of tools is a challenge, right? Because people end up being kind of always on and trying to balance that need and desire to be open with the expectation or the presumed expectation that everybody should always be looking at their phone or IRC client is a real challenge, I think, not only for us, but in a lot of companies these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely understand. We use Slack in the office as well. And my big challenge with that is I always am tempted to move productivity directly into Slack, which is always taking it and not using it as a communication tool is always the worst idea ever.
Right. Yep. Well, you're not alone there. So some of the things that we have found useful, though, we use and recently started implementing. We do a lot of one-on-ones. It's really important that I connect with my direct reports and that they do the same throughout their business. And we practice something called EOS, where we set very clear goals, have a way that we structure our meetings. It's not rocket science. It just gives you kind of a formula to run your company against. And we recently started using a tool called Lattice, which just has become awesome for us. It's a way to set your goals, waterfall those throughout your organization, and then do your schedule and manage your one-on-ones in a way that's really collaborative. It also does 360 review stuff and other things that are important as you get to kind of be a little bit bigger. But I'll tell you, that has been one of the breath of fresh air that we've had throughout our company is a way to structure kind of people's goals and expectations so that they know what you're asking for them, and you can also really judge and be transparent about where things are at. So it's been a huge benefit for us.
All right, shifting gears a little bit here. Do you have any book recommendations for other IT pros out there, and what are you reading right now?
Well, I don't know. I kind of had the Bible, right? So the Bible in my world is the SRE handbook, right? From Google. So that's probably one of my favorite reads. In fact, I was picking up a chapter the other day. So I guess that's what I would be reading right now, because it's hard for me. I don't understand everything. And I always reread until I kind of see it in a couple different ways. But, learning from the team at Google about how they think around infrastructure and operations and software, and kind of putting those into real kind of clear visions around how these can work within organizations. It's just so clear that they went through so many of the challenges that many of us are having today in a world where software is moving fast and businesses are trying to keep up. And they lived this and created some really interesting ways around them. So that's probably my favorite book, and I come back to it every couple months and reread as much as I can get through before I fall asleep.
That's a pretty good recommendation. That's new to us, so that's awesome. All right, and what are you doing when you're not working in IT or reading the SRE handbook?
Well, a few things. So I lead the Lower Manhattan Boy Scout troop. So I got, like I said, young kids, and we live in the concrete jungle. And so something that I really enjoyed growing up was camping. And so I started and run the Pack 3 in Lower Manhattan, and that's a true joy of mine. So I try and donate my time when I have it to things that help both my own kind of family and community, wherever possible. And so one of the other things that I'm pretty passionate about is bringing more people into kind of the somewhat white male technology world that exists. So I support and I'm on the operating board of a company called Coalition for Queens that brings kind of blue collar immigrant workers into the New York City technology ecosystem. So I spent a lot of time there. And then I'm a runner. So a couple nights a week, I get out, do my miles, usually do it with a friend or two, and people watch throughout the city while I do it.
That is pretty well-rounded. Were you, out of curiosity, were you a Boy Scout yourself growing up?
Yeah, for all of about 2 months. I didn't make it very far, and I think it was because my den leader, hopefully she never listens to this, but she basically just fed us Cheetos the whole time and put us in front of the TV, which didn't really feel very Boy Scouty to me. But anyways, I think it was when I came home and threw up Cheetos that my mom and I decided that this was probably not what we were looking for.
That is pretty good. So we'll be looking at what, a bear right now?
Oh, yeah, man. We got lions down at the kindergarten level,
okay.
And we got bears in third grade. So,
okay,
yeah, we got the mix. Yeah,
that's
it. I'm assuming, did you make it all the way to Eagle? Or?
No, I tapped out at first class, and then I discovered girls, and that was it at about 15, 16 for me.
If only you could do it again, because as of January, the Boy Scouts now has family scouting. So
yeah, I have a friend who's one of the pilot parent organizers for that. Which is pretty awesome. Yeah, in the area.
Yeah, I mean it's a big change, but I think one that's really overdue. So we're excited here in New York for that.
Yeah. But I think I always found it a very interesting organization for, wasn't super into sports, but wanted some camaraderie. And I thought it was a great organization for that.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right. And how do you caffeine if you do?
Oh, it's always espresso for me.
Really? Just a straight tiny cup espresso?
Yeah, well, it might be more than one. So I've got two favorites, and one is in the morning. It's an AeroPress. So I don't know if you've used an AeroPress before, but
I'm familiar
same
with
guy who. Okay, right. So it's pretty good. It's very easy. Not a lot of mechanics going on. So that's the morning, and the afternoon is usually 1 or 2 shots in espresso.
And since you're in New York, do you have a go-to coffee shop? I figure there's no dearth of selection there.
Yeah, we have no coffee shops in New York. It's awful. They've all moved to Brooklyn. Yeah. No. So we are kind of like inundated with ridiculously amazing coffee shops where, I don't know, the current trend in New York City, at least in downtown, is all the Aussie coffee shops. So there's a whole bunch of Australian coffee shops around here. And they talk with this really great accent. They are like 6'2" and strikingly good looking. And then they kind of look down at you as they serve you your flat white. Which is very Australian. Is very Australian. But I'm looking at one of my favorite coffee shops. It's actually not here at all. But last year I go to Barcelona about once a year. There's a big show called Mobile World Congress where all the like telecom nerds hang out. And there's this really, really cool offbeat coffee shop that one of my clients introduced me called Satan's. And I didn't go this year, but my friend, one of my colleagues here at the office went, and he brought me back a cool Satan's patch, which is sitting right in front of me right now. So I might have to put Satan's up on the list. So if you're ever in Barcelona, New York City, go for the Aussies, flat white, definitely good. Barcelona, go to Satan's.
Well, we're out there for Cisco Live Europe, so I might have to look that up next time we're out there.
Absolutely.
All right, and who would you like to see sit down for the IT Origins interview?
That's a really good question. Wow. I would like to say that, okay, I got to think of this too. I'd like to see Lisa Su from AMD.
Oh, great. Oh, my God. Yes. Oh, my Lord. I would love that.
You got to go high, all right?
Exactly.
And I just am like such a fan. I'm going out to Open Compute next week, and I'm hoping she's going to be there so I can kind of like get the autograph. I'm going to bring a chip so she can sign it. But just such a inspiring kind of female CEO leader, right? Amazing engineer, New Yorker, right? And really, I think having a great comeback with AMD right now. So let's get Lisa on the phone.
As a former AMD fanboy in my computer building days, that would make my heart flutter.
You can be an AMD fanboy again.
This is true. It's been a little bit of a rough patch, but the
Ryzen waits for you.
Now I just need to get spousal approval to drop that kind of money, right?
Yeah, or you can try to unpack it. We got the Epic. It's almost as good.
Ooh, yes, I did see that the other day. That's pretty awesome. I always know if I'm going to go to pack it, I'm spinning up some weird ARM servers, and I don't know what I'm doing with them, but that's what I'm doing.
You're trying to see if you can get the kernel to compile on all 96 cores. Of course, that's what you're going to do with it.
All right, and last question here before we get you out of here. Best career advice you've received?
Network all the time. My wife, we used to we were dating at the time. This is my best story for networking. And we were dating at the time, and we used to have this long elevator we'd have to take getting out of the subway in 190th Street on Fort Washington Avenue up in Upper Manhattan, whatever. It's this really, really uncomfortable situation where you're in the elevator with 30 or 40 other random strangers and everybody's quiet because it takes like 2 minutes to go up the elevator. And me being this like nice little homeboy from California, what do? I turn to the guy next to me or gal next to me and say, "Hey, my name's Zach." And my wife would always jab me being like, stop it. Nobody wants to talk to you. I have met so many people and advance my career in more ways than I can possibly handle by just getting used to talking to more people. And, network, don't be afraid. Most people are really, really nice in this world. And if they're not really nice, we'll fooey on them. And so don't be afraid to just, ask for a favor, get to know, be inquisitive, and, good things really happen.
Zach, this has been a pleasure, and I appreciate you being here for IT Origin. This was awesome.
Well, when you get Lisa, call me, all right?
I will definitely share that link. I think, why not? I think we'll book her for next week. Thanks for listening to IT Origins. And remember, we have new interviews up on gestaltit.com each and every Thursday. Be sure to check out our back catalog. We've got just under 20 odd interviews up already. Until next week, remember, have a super sparkly day.